That bodes well.
Joining us now, a member of the Chairmanship's Committee, Congressman Krishnanmoorthi, a Democrat from Illinois. He's a member of the House Intelligence Committee, which issued the subpoena for the Trump financial records from Deutsche Bank and Capital One. That subpoena was ordered and enforced today. He's also a member of the House Oversight Committee. And also with us, Adam Klasfeld, a reporter for Courthouse News who was actually inside that courtroom today as the drama, and I do mean drama, unfolded. Congressman Krishnanmoorthi, I want to start with you. I'm sure you had confidence that your subpoenas would be enforced this way, since historically they always have been. But it has to be a giant relief that not only were they enforced, but at very high speed. You rarely see a court act this quickly. The judge literally listened to the arguments, took a 20-minute break, came back in, said, okay, here's the deal.
Yeah, that's correct. I think that, as you know, with the Mazars ruling earlier this week and now this particular ruling in New York, it's clear the courts are unanimous in their sentiment that Congress has the authority to conduct oversight and investigations and issue subpoenas, and those subpoenas need to be complied with. And so I think there are cracks forming in the Trump obstruction strategy and the strategy to try to delay the production of documents and important testimony that we should have. And hopefully they come to their senses and start cooperating and producing documents and other testimony in other matters as well.
Adam, today's judge echoed Monday's judge, saying there was no serious question. That's the phrase they used. No serious question was raised by the Trump side. Right. And what that meant to him, since he had the case for 3 weeks and has been able to study it, is he was ready to issue an opinion unless he heard something from the Trump lawyers that he didn't know about, which is why he questioned them very closely. Absolutely. He questioned the House of Representatives lawyers very, very closely. But he was ready to go as soon as that argument ended.
Absolutely. Now, one thing that I came out of that hearing thinking is, don't sit next to this judge across from the judge at a poker table, because he didn't let anything on. He went through the entire hearing, basically peppering both sides, giving incisive questions, and then he called for that brief recess, and he had that opinion ready. He knew when he was he had carefully considered both sides of it, and it was reflected in his questions. He hit all the points, and he raised all of the issues that both of the sides had said. But his opinion was withering, and it echoed a lot of the language that Judge Mehta did in the D.C. case, basically saying there was no serious argument, that it may be a serious thing that that Congress is investigating the president, as a colloquial understanding of it, but there was no serious legal argument raised. And
Congressman, the Monday's case is already going to an expedited appeal, and so what we're seeing in the federal judges who are handling this at the district court level, at the lowest level, and then in the appeals level, is there seems to be a recognition that this has to be done at the highest speed possible.
That's exactly right. I think that they understand that what's being tested is our oversight power. So let's not make any mistake about what's going on here. The Trump administration, if it were to succeed in this strategy of obstructing oversight in this particular instance, may employ this same strategy in any number of instances throughout our oversight duties in the legislative process, whether it's immigration or health care or any other matter. And so this is very serious. I'm very glad to see what happened, and I think the last time a court did not side with Congress was in the time of the presidency of Rutherford B. Hayes. And so let's get on with this. We're going to keep winning in court here. We're going to get these documents eventually. I hope the message is loud and clear to the Trump administration. It's time to cooperate with our oversight powers and start producing documents, but also having witnesses come and testify too.
Adam, it was quite striking that in the judge's opinion, he twice cited the Washington case earlier this week, cited the judge by name in that case, specifically, in effect, said, you know, thanks for the help in doing some of the same legal scholarship.
Absolutely. It was very clear that as soon as the Washington opinion came down, the counsel for the House of Representatives alerted him to it. So he knew. So
the decision comes out in D.C., and
right.
The lawyers for the House in that case immediately alert the New York judge, you might want to take a look at this.
Within moments, it hit the docket.
Of course, we alerted him, too, because it was news everywhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Everyone watches MSNBC.
Right.
Come on.
Yeah.
there was no missing that giant historic news. But he was considering it from the get-go, and that was very apparent. The shadow of the Washington opinion just hovered over today's proceedings. You couldn't ignore that sweeping ruling, which created another sweeping ruling.
And, Lawrence, can I jump in for 1 second?
Please, go ahead.
That, you know, the Trump administration kept throwing up the argument that there's no valid legislative purpose behind these subpoenas. And as you can see from Judge Mehta's and now Judge Ramos's rulings, they cited so many legislative potential purposes for seeking these records that it's amply clear that that particular argument is not going to win the day for the Trump administration. For instance, between the Mehta and the Ramos ruling, they said, you know, we need these records for purposes of strengthening our ethics and disclosure laws, that we need to make sure that the U.S. financial system isn't subject to money laundering and the illicit use of the financial system, that we should be able to know whether there's ongoing wrongdoing in the executive branch, and finally, you know, whether from a counterintelligence standpoint, payments were made by the Russians to President Trump or family members, and therefore, that could be the basis for compromise or manipulation of Trump officials today to the endangerment of our national security. So many purposes were set forth by the judges. That's precedent that will be used in future cases.
Congressman Raja Krishnanmoorthi gets the last word on today's subpoena case. And Adam Klasfeld, thank you also very much.